Secrets of the Obscure introduced weapon mastery, which allows classes to use all weapons available from any elite specialization. But with the latest patch, there were even more weapons introduced. Guardians can use 2 pistols, for example. Thieves can use a main hand axe, and Rangers can use 2 maces. To get access to these new weapons, you need to do an achievement in the new story patch, or go to a notary in World vs. World. But most of these weapons may seem a bit niche due to their more supportive nature. Things like Heal Revenant were good already, but they seem to lack something in their gameplay because you were mostly playing around traits and not your weapons. So most of these weapons provide more interactive skills for you to play with on support classes. And while there were no new specializations to go with these weapons, it means for the most part you'll be sticking to a new weapon on an existing playstyle. But which weapons work on what builds, and are there any new playstyles that emerge with these new weapons? It's too soon to see where the meta will go just yet. But if you want to play with these new weapons, you can try out these 9 builds I made for open world PvE, so you can get into the new content as soon as possible with a build that is fun and works out in meta events or solo situations. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe, and without any further delay, let's start with the Warrior. Warriors get a staff which has great mobility and healing. The burst skill adds some more healing, but it's not really necessary, so I chose the Bladesworn for a frontline tank build that can heal. This can either give alacrity with the Grandmaster trait, or go for full damage and sustain with the other trait. Either way, you get a 100% crit chance with the arms traits and your Dragon Slash, which then gives you a few more seconds of guaranteed criticals to use your Gunblade abilities. Then once you run out of your crit chance, you can swap back to your staff and use the healing skills. Since you don't need critical chance or boon duration, since you'll have permanent alacrity, might, and fury regardless of how much boon duration you have, you can go for the Crusader stat type, which gives you power and ferocity to make your Dragon Slashes hit hard, and then toughness and healing power to allow you to heal allies and to stay alive on the front line long enough, because we all know that warriors never back down, even if it means their death. If you don't want Crusader stats because they're kind of niche, then you could go Dragons, Valkyrie, or Harriers, depending on your playstyle. You'll often use 2 Dragon Slashes before going back to your staff due to the cooldown of your weapon swap, but when you go back to your staff, save your Force skill, which is a pull, to gather a bunch of enemies together before you use your next Dragon Slash. Guardians get pistols, which allow for condition builds to finally have dedicated condition weapons. Before, you would run an axe and a torch for conditions, and then have an entire second weapon set just for utility because there weren't any other options for damage. Now you can go with a torch and 2 pistols to keep pumping out conditions, and this works best on a Celestial or Viper's Willbender because you get the mobility that the pistols lack, and I would still go for a sword instead of an axe because even more mobility just seems more fun. Also, you'll sometimes want to be in melee range to place down your pistol 3 symbol and shoot through it with the Force skill for more burning. Otherwise, this build is pretty self-explanatory, just mash your keys and stuff will burn to death. Revenant Scepter is a weird one because of how niche the skills are. It'll definitely be useful on a support Revenant build because there was always a staff and shield for support, but never a really good main hand to go with the shield. Now Scepter fills that role. But while a full support build can be useful, it isn't that rewarding. Instead, I suggest a build that goes full into the auto attack of the Scepter, which has a wide cleave. It's wider than any other skill. This feels amazing in larger situations where you can hit enemies that are all spread out. And since it just feels the best to keep auto attacking, we'll go into Herald to use the Facet passives and the Chalice Hammers, which have no animation, so we can get permanent quickness from the Upkeep trait, which allows us to auto attack with quickness uninterrupted. Since you get a decent amount of sustain passively from the Facet of Light, you can go full Berserker to maximize your cleave damage. You can use the 2 and the 3 skill if you want, and that might even be better sometimes, but it won't be as fun as just auto attacking. Ranger Maces are pretty fun because of how much CC they have. They'll be useful on support Druid builds because the regeneration and protection that it gives, but there's also a mechanic where once you land 5 mace attacks, you'll go into big mode and deal 15% more damage and heal for like 25% more, but it's not really relevant, that second part. What's relevant is that rangers love damage modifiers, and if you go on a Sikkim Soul Beast with a sword axe and 2 maces, precast all of your damage modifiers, 1 wolf pack, frost trap, Sikkim, quickening Zephyr, and then hit your last mace attack to go into big mode. Sure, you can use your mace skills again because they refresh once you go into big mode, but you aren't really doing much damage using them again, and you've got limited time left in the big mode, so you just use the Axe 5 instead and do the skill that does the most damage while you've got the most damage modifiers stacked. Roll your face on the keyboard and hit the Exodia combo. Obviously, you just want to go full berserker damage for this, and what's nice is that the mace gives you a bit of survivability due to the pet healing from the mace 3 going to you instead of the pet while you're merged. So this gives you a little bit more survivability while you're waiting for your big combo again. Engineer's Shortbow is a bit underwhelming in terms of damage, but it has a ton of utility and, most importantly, blast finishers on the 2 and 5 skill. While I would prefer to use this weapon in World vs. World because of its ranged capabilities, you can still run a full healer scrapper build in open world PvE and have one of the highest healing capabilities due to the trait that shares your healing to nearby allies. Using the Medkit Tool Belt Heal, you can give protection to allies permanently. Then you use the Mortar and Medkit Water Fields and Blast Finisher inside them. Your Blast Finishers can heal extra with the Caracosa Relic on top of the already good Water Blast Finisher. And you give quickness when doing these blasts, so you can nuke heal, give barrier, tons of boons, and cleanse allies. Engineers were already pretty good at healing, but with the Shortbow you can now do it at range by shooting the Mortar healing field at allies far away from you, and then blast it with the Shortbow 2 or 5 skill, and then you can use your Medkit 3 skill on yourself and heal allies nearby with the Function Gyro Blast or Acid Bomb Blast. It's best if you go full Minstrels because you won't do too much damage with the Shortbow, but as long as you have healing power and concentration and the Caracosa Relic, you're good to put your team on your back. Thieves got the Axe, which adds a new interesting playstyle that is almost like a Mesmer, where you set up your clones and then you shatter them for a big burst, but instead you throw spinning axes and then pull them to your target. The Pistol Offhand is a more power playstyle, which works well in PvP, but in open world PvE, it doesn't make sense when you can just use Pistol or Rifle for more reliable and easier power burst. So a Dagger Offhand condition playstyle makes the most sense. The problem with this is you port next to the target when you use the Dagger dual attack skill, which can put you in danger. So while you can go for a full Viper setup and deal massive damage over time, that's not really necessary, so you can go for Celestial and have a bit more survivability, then go Deadeye for the Maleficent 7 to give you infinite initiative, which at the time of this video is kind of bugged, so you need to use Mercy to upkeep your initiative, but basically you would need to manage your axes by using 2 sets of the Poison Axes, which have a shotgun effect, so you want to use them in melee range, and then once you've got 6 of them out, you want to use the 3 skill to converge them on your target, and repeat that while also managing your Malice stack separately to keep resetting your Malicious attack using Stealth from Blinding Powder or the Stolen ability when at maximum Malice. The damage is a bit slow to ramp up, so it's mostly good for bosses, but it can pierce, so it isn't bad in situations with tons of enemies. Necromancers get 2 swords, and while most of the abilities just do damage and heal you, they have secondary casts that you can sacrifice extra life for. Generally, this works best for a Harbinger because they heal a lot to make up for the sacrifices they make, and since there are no damaging conditions, a Power Harbinger build looks to be the best here, and since you need health on Necromancers to scale with your Blight and Shroud, Marauder or Dragon Gear is the best here. There's a Leap, which allows you to get a lot of mobility, much more than you could before since no weapons had mobility on them, only Shroud abilities or utilities. Also with the Blood Bank trait, you gain much more value from the sword because the healing it provides gives you barrier, which will then mitigate the sacrifices you make when recasting the sword skills. So just make sure you use all your sword skills and utilities before entering Shroud, and then use the 3 and 4 when you're over the Blight threshold for the double damage, and you'll just delete everything. For Mesmers, the rifle is great for support builds, but you could also utilize the fact that the Rifle Phantasm has 2 ammo charges, which allows you to make huge Continuum Rift plays as a Berserker Chronomancer. Running a Chrono Phantasma build with illusions and inspiration gives you huge value for summoning phantasms, and since each rifle forecast is a stun, you can cast it potentially 6 times in a row if you use your Signet of the Ether to get a third one inside your Continuum Rift, and then repeat when getting out. Then while your enemies are enjoying the rifle stuns, you can hit them with the Greatsword or utility phantasms. One thing that's nice is that you can get Fury from the Rifle 3 if you don't detonate it, and this means Chronomancers can gain access to Fury without going for Relic of the Midnight King or the Dueling trait line. This means you could go Domination instead of Inspiration too if you just want more damage, since the rifle does have some sustain for you in between Phantasm casts. And finally, the Elementalist Pistol. This replaces the Scepter as a ranged condition option, and the bullet mechanic can be a little bit difficult to wrap your head around because which skill you use first on the pistol will empower the second one. But if you just follow a set rotation, you don't really need to make those decisions. So of course you'll want to play Celestial on hybrid Elementalist builds because they get value from every stat. Then you just need to remember that if you want to deal more damage, you want to use Water 2 then 3, and every other attunement 3 then 2. So a decent rotation would be Water, Air, Fire, Earth. And we can get value from the Catalyst trait line because there are quite a few combos and disables we can do in our rotation to get stacks of elemental power, especially from the Dagger offhand. So just stick to the rotation, Water, Air, Fire, Earth, use 3 then 2, except in Water where you use 2 then 3, and when you have a gap in cooldowns, just use one of your Signets or use Elemental Celerity to recharge that weapon set. You could use 3 then 2 in Water to get more self-healing, but with Celestial stats, we remove the need for those decisions. But if you'd like to make a great decision to ensure you get the best content for Guild Wars 2, subscribe and like the video, and please support me by clicking the links in the description. These builds will be a great start for now, but later we'll be updating the meta builds on guildgen.com, so be sure to check there when you want to try something new, and I will see you all next time.